guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my August reading wrap up. I feel like I read so many of these books in reading vlogs, and so I've talked about them literally for so long already, so it feels so weird doing this wrap up right now because I feel like I've yapped way too much about these books already. So this will probably be a short one. I'll try my best not to go off on tangents because that's what I did in the reading vlogs already. No need to do it here too. The first book that I read is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter, which was an ARC. I was so excited to get an ARC. It was the first time ever, and it kind of disappointed me. Nothing Like the Movies is the sequel to Better Than the Movies. It's the sequel to this book, and this book is so amazing. It's so fun and just a breath of fresh air. It's a lovely YA romance book. It just follows them throughout their college life, and it kind of just shows you the things that they've both been through since the last book, because they've both kind of been through a lot. I think one of my biggest issues with it is that it was very much focused on them separately at the beginning and what they were doing with their lives. Like Liz is into this like film and photography stuff, and then Wes has his baseball career that he went to college for, and it just very much is focused on both of those things, and I did not really care about either of those things. Reading about it just wasn't fun, it wasn't entertaining, it was honestly just boring. There was so much to, I don't know, get through between the two of them, but they were just off doing their own things most of the time. And I mean, I get it, you can't just snap back into it, but I guess I just wanted more like them in mutual places and like tension. I don't know. There's also something that happens in the beginning of this book involving one of Liz's friends, and I just felt like that part was so silly. There were still lots of things that I loved about the book, like all of Lynn Painter's pop culture references. They're always so fun. I really enjoyed reading those really emotional moments, and I really started to enjoy the book like 65% in and onwards. But before that, yeah, I was kind of like, where's this going? I'm uninterested in film, photography, and baseball, and I don't know, I just wasn't really that into it. I feel like the issue is just not all books need a sequel, you know? But I think some people will still really love it, and I think the ending really did make up for it, but the characters also changed quite a bit, which is fair. They've been through a lot, but I don't know. Honestly, if this stayed just a standalone, I would have been completely fine. I don't think that this sequel was 100% necessary. I ended up giving Nothing Like the Movies a 3.5. When it comes out, I hope you guys like it more than I did, especially if you really love Better Than the Movies. I just wasn't that into it. The next book I read is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. My favorite thing about Sally Rooney's writing is how real her characters feel. I find people that I've known throughout my life in her characters, in the little things that they do. They're not exactly like them, but it just feels all too real. I feel like this is one of those books that's just no plot, just vibes, which is like Sally Rooney's other books. I feel like if you know her writing and you like her writing, I would definitely recommend this one. This one just made me really excited to read her next book that's literally coming out this month. There's a line at the back of this book that says they desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break apart, they have sex, they worry about sex, they worry about their friendships and the world that they live in. And I feel like that perfectly describes what goes on in the book. That's basically all that they're doing. I really enjoyed it though, and I gave this book a 4.5 star. The next book that I attempted to read is The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I actually DNF'd this book because I was getting too like, not emotionally attached, but I don't know, I was just getting too emotional reading it. The beginning of this book gives us some backstory of the main character, Charlie. In primary school, one of his friends passed away, and it affected him really badly, and he kind of just goes through life being sad. And there was another part of this book where something happened to him, and I experienced the same thing, so I just couldn't read it anymore. It just was too emotional for me. And I was having a rough time finishing it, so I didn't. I think I could get back to this in the future, but for now, it's a DNF. It was not a DNF because it was bad by any means. I actually think it was going really good. I just got affected by what was in the book, so I stopped reading it. Anyway, the next book, My Magnolia Summer by Victoria Benton Frank. This is about 3 generations of women, and the main point of view is Magnolia's point of view, My Magnolia Summer. And she originally lives in New York. She's a chef there, but she rushes back home to Charleston when she finds out that her grandma had a really bad accident. Her grandma is Rose and her sister is Violet and her mom is Lily. She has a really complicated relationship with her mother, and it kind of makes her have a complicated relationship with her sister. But she has a complicated relationship with her sister for other reasons too that I thought was insane about this book. But basically what happens in Charleston is that Magnolia tries to save this restaurant that's been in their family, and her grandma that she's so attached to is the reason that this restaurant like stayed afloat for so long. So she comes back and she tries to save it. It's just like a bunch of family drama that I found quite entertaining. This book had a really bad dialogue though. The dialogue was just clumsy and very weird. There was this best friend in this book. I didn't hate him. He seemed fine. It's just he was so irrelevant to the plot. Anything that he said or did in this book just didn't add to literally anything. He was just like there. He didn't add any comedic relief. I don't know, he was just there. He left at some point too, and I was just like, this book is the same exact book as when he was there, and when he left there's just less like weird awkward dialogue. I enjoyed the drama in this, but it honestly wasn't anything that memorable, and I wouldn't be telling you guys to like run out and go buy it immediately. It was just okay. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, and this is about 2 people who knew each other in their childhood lives. They don't see each other for a really long time, and then they run into each other in a coffee shop. We kind of just go through like back and forth leading up to what happened, why they stopped speaking, and this book really gets me. The ending is very emotional, and I didn't expect like the ending to affect me again because I already knew what happened. I've read it before, but it still affected me. It still made me emotional, still made me tear up a lot, and I think that the love in this book is just really sweet and everyone should read it. I just think that some of the things that they did in their adult lives was kind of problematic because when they did meet up again, they were already seeing other people. Also, I remember when I was reading this for the second time, for some reason, the beginning felt really slow. I was like, how can I not get into this when I literally rated this a 5-star before? Like, I think the 5-star was like the shock of what happens at the end. Like, originally I was like, I finished reading that ending and I was immediately like, I need to rate this 5 stars. But the beginning of this book was honestly pretty slow to get into. I don't know, maybe that's just me. So I ended up changing this to a 4.75. That's still really, really high. It's such a good book. It's just not as perfect as I thought it was back then. Summer Sisters by Judy Blume. This one was honestly such like a random book that I wanted to read. I don't even know where I saw it. I think I just saw it in the store one day and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read that this summer. And then I did. This book reminds me so much of Mary Jane. I'm gonna put it on the screen because I don't remember the author of that book. For some reason reminds me of that. It is pretty different, but I think the characters or something. I know that book is really popular, and I think if you like that book, you would really enjoy this book too. This book is about 2 girls who spend every summer together. That's why they call themselves Summer Sisters, because Vix spends her summers with Caitlin's family, so she like feels like a sister, but only in the summertime. And they kind of like lose touch throughout the years. They're kind of like in and out of each other's lives. Something major happens one summer and you just go through the motions of trying to figure out what it was and why they like lost touch. You find out so many little things as you go, and I just remember thinking, how did we get from the prologue to here? Like, how actually, well, the prologue is the now, so how did we get from there to the prologue? Like, it was kind of insane to read. I genuinely was shocked by all the things that were revealed. Didn't guess anything, didn't think that's how it was gonna end. And the character Caitlin, I felt so conflicted about her. One time I'm like feeling bad for her, the other time I'm like, oh, she's awful, she's a terrible person, and then I feel bad for her again, and I just genuinely don't know how to feel about her. I still don't. This book kind of put me through the emotions and I really, really enjoyed it. I rated this book 4.75 stars too. I recommend this. I know it's a summer book. Maybe you could read it in September while you're wrapping up summer, or put it on next year's TBR because I feel like I don't hear that many people talking about this. And I loved it. The next book I read is A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber, and I'm honestly not gonna say too much about this because it's the 3rd book in a series. It's from the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and that series starts out with Evangeline seeing the love of her life marrying someone else, and she thinks that he's like under a spell. She thinks this can't be right, so she makes a deal with the Prince of Hearts, try to help her. And you should never make a deal with the Prince of Hearts, and it kind of just leads her to getting into a lot of mess throughout the series, and this was the final one, and I just don't feel like this one did a good job at wrapping up the series. I think the first and the second books were really good, especially the second book. The second book in this series is so good. It broke my heart, but loved it. I loved everything about it. Plot-wise, it felt like we took 5 steps backwards. Like, the second one was so many steps forward when it comes to the plot, and then I feel like this one just took us 10 steps backward. And it kind of felt like we were going in circles, and it was just overall kind of underwhelming. It's unfortunate that the series ended that way. I ended up rating this book 3.25 stars. There were still some moments in there that I really liked. You know what was happening with this book? I was like having a good time, then I was like kind of bored, then I was having a good time, then I was like, why are we doing this? And then I was having a good time again. It was just very back and forth, mixed emotions for me. So yeah, 3.25 stars. The next book I read is Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh, which is another book in a series that kind of didn't live up to the expectations for me. My biggest issue with this book is that it just felt like a book to set up Lizzie's story, and I understand that that needs to be done throughout a series. I really appreciate it, actually. I wanted to learn about Lizzie, but this just could have been longer. I wanted to learn about Lizzie, but also get lots of Claire and Gibbsy, because this was their book, and it just felt like it was everyone else's book. The Boys of Tommen series starts out with Finding 13. It's about Shannon and Johnny, and Shannon is someone who goes through a really tough home life, and she gets bullied and she has to move to a new school, and that's where she meets Johnny. We kind of just go through everything that she experiences in Binding and Keeping 13. Those are the first 2 books in the series, and then Saving 6 and Redeeming 6 is about her brother, so we learn a lot more about their entire family. And this is meant to be Gibbsy and Claire's story. We see lots of glimpses of them in the other books, and I feel like everyone got really hyped up about Gibbsy, but I don't know if everyone else is satisfied, but I feel like I'm not. I wanted more, especially of Claire. We definitely did go through Gibbsy's story, and I think a lot was revealed. It wasn't what I expected at all, but I feel like we barely got anything about Claire, who Claire was. Claire would literally have inner monologue about Shannon and Johnny. She would be like, oh my god, they're so perfect for each other. I feel bad about everything she went through, and I totally get that. I understand why it's there. It's a series, it's interconnected, and I love the little updates and the crumbs of Shannon and Johnny, but I just felt like it was too much sometimes. Like, her inner monologue about them was just so long, and it's just like, let's learn something about Claire for once, you know? Like, we already read literally what felt like 4 books about Shannon. We're still learning about her family dynamic in Joey's books, Saving 6 and Redeeming 6. So the inner monologues just didn't need to be that long, and we should have focused more on the couple. There were also these like really random moments, like something would happen and I'm like, wow, we gotta get into this. And then the next scene is just like, they're back to playing rugby or something. And I'm just like, we have things to discuss. This one also was slightly disappointing, but the ending was actually so like shocking, and I remember just putting this book down and needing to stare at the wall. So overall, obviously there's just this like comfort that comes with reading these books and like reading about the found family and all of them. I do love just reading about them and being in this world. So I gave this 3.5 stars. It's actually my lowest rated book in this entire series, but it's not the worst thing ever. It just didn't really live up to my expectations, and I feel like that's probably my own fault. The next book I read is Heartstopper 2, and literally the only notes I have for this is wholesome, cutest perfection. That's just what it is. This is a graphic novel about Nick and Charlie, and they go to the same school, and Charlie's openly gay, and when he becomes friends with Nick, kind of starts falling in love with him, and Nick is just confused because he's never had an experience with liking another boy, and it's just such wholesome and cute perfection. I'm only on the second one. I already got the third one and I'm so ready to read it. I gave this 5 stars because I was literally giggling, kicking my feet, and smiling the entire time. So how could I not? The last book I read in August is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and I read this because it's literally like the best book of 2023. When you look up those lists, this book will always be on there. I'm not saying that it's always going to be number 1 on every list, but it will always be on there. This book is about 2 authors, and one of them has really bad luck with her books and her writing. Like, her first book flopped and she's just not doing very well as an author. And then the other friend is like the complete opposite of her. She has so many opportunities, she has so many great books, and she just is doing really good in her career. Then she dies. So what happens when she dies is that the friend who doesn't have a lot going on, she steals the dead friend's manuscript and she like finishes it up and publishes it as her own. And that entire thing just spirals. Obviously it would, because you can't just do that. I started this book on a day that I had other things to do and I was like so mad. I was like, I just want to sit down and read this book. It's just, it like sucks you in. Second chapter, I was addicted. I felt like I was being manipulated. I felt like I was being lied to by the narrator. I felt like I was being gaslit, but it's so addicting. I just wanted to continue reading, and I'm just like, how is this gonna spiral? How is she gonna get out of this? Like, how are people gonna treat her? It was such a mess in the best way possible. I love these types of books with not a single likable character. Something about that just feels so real to me. I gave this 4.5 stars, and the only reason that it's like a 0.5 off is because the ending was honestly kind of underwhelming. It felt kind of like movie type of cliche. I don't know, I was expecting like a bigger blowout for this book, or like bigger things, or something like that'll like psychologically mess with me. I don't know, I was expecting a little bit more for the ending, so I did take 0.5 off, but it was still really, really good. And yeah, I could see why it's on like every list of 2023 for being a really good book, because it really is. I think it's so interesting how R.F. Kuang, doesn't she mostly write fantasy books, and to come out with a literary fiction book like this and have it be so good. Does she write romance? Does she write other genres? She should have one book in each genre. That would be great. You know how in the academies you could have like an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, and that's like your significant for that? You're like superior for that? R.F. Kuang should like be that of the book community. Have a book in every genre. I think it's just so cool how she originally writes mostly fantasy and she just branches out from that. I think she's brilliant. Anyway, those are all the books that I read in August. It was a pretty decent reading month. If you got to this point of the video, please comment down below what was your favorite book of August, and also comment a yellow emoji so that I know that you got to this point of the video. And if you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you soon. Bye!